Hey everybody, Jordan here, and today I thought I would finally make a video for my channel on Kundalini specifically. And yeah, just so you know, I'm filming in my living room right now, and I've had to sort of tilt the camera this way because there's a picture of my family, and obviously I don't want to show it, so the camera's kind of facing like over there. But I'm gonna look into the camera and everything, so you know, it should be still quite natural. But just to let you know, if it looks a bit weird. But yeah, today I wanted to do a video on Kundalini, and I'm probably going to be making a lot of videos actually on various different subjects from here on to the future because, as you know, I'm the you spiritually person on the Reddit. Although the account is technically shared, it's shared among anyone who works with us. But I'm usually the person who's doing the channeling of Jay, and refining and formatting the posts so that they're readable. So hi, hello, and yeah, you might know me already because I've had some videos on my YouTube channel, but I don't tend to advertise the YouTube channel very much because it's not really being very active. I haven't had the necessary equipment and things that would be important for being able to actually produce videos that would be of any reasonable quality. Filming, for instance, with a phone is very annoying if anyone's ever tried to do that, and the audio quality can suffer as well, which can sometimes be a bit frustrating and jarring. So, I finally actually have some equipment I can use to make these videos. So that's going to be really cool because I plan to make a lot of them. Um, but yeah, that's the main things, sort of preliminaries before we jump into the subject. And it's been amazing, interacting with all of you on the Reddit. I love you all, and it's been a joy to channel Jay and let them give their perspective on things because I learn things from Jay's perspective. I'm always learning new things because of the questions that you ask. So if it wasn't for all of you even chipping in and asking questions, then we wouldn't even be where we are now. The Reddit has definitely grown over time, and I've been really enjoying just seeing it develop. So that's been super duper cool. Um, but yeah, if you guys didn't know about me, now you can put a face to the name, um, and there will be more faces that will come as well. For instance, there's a moderator called Armlegger on the Reddit. That's my father. You will meet him very soon, I'm sure, in one of the upcoming videos. And there are many other entities or other of my brothers and sisters on this planet that have been helping me, um, and my dad and anyone else who's involved build this sort of thing that we're building now. And it's all toward a goal. It's all toward a vision. Um, the vision that one day we might be able to open up some kind of retreat center where we can essentially help all of you in a very understandable way, in a way that actually makes some logical sense. It's not just vague ideas and concepts like Kundalini and like chakras. Explaining it in a refined way so you can understand intellectually what it is that you're doing and how what it is that you're doing is benefiting your spiritual growth. So that's the vision, that's the goal, and that's what we're essentially working towards. That's one of our major goals, and creating the Reddit and making more informed social medias and all these kinds of things are steps along that direction. But yeah, I don't want to bore you with all this stuff. I just thought maybe I should give at least some brief expansion, before I actually dive into these sorts of subjects like Kundalini and such things. So I hope you don't mind a longer introduction before we dive in. And I thought, where better to start when it comes to spiritual subjects than the very thing that begins it all, which is Kundalini itself. Because if we didn't have a Kundalini, we wouldn't even be able to live. So let's begin at the most fundamental thing of all, which I think anyone and everyone should learn. So it begins with what is the Kundalini, and a lot of these teachings are going to be based off the things that I've learned from Jay. They're also going to be a mix of things that I've learned from other places, and also the things I've learned from doing source readings as well. So just in case you're wondering where this information is coming from. So yeah, Kundalini is the internal flame, but it's not like a chemical energy. We know fire as chemical energy. Fire is a rapid vibration of chemicals. So it's definitely not that kind of fire. It's a much more intelligent, controlled, or ought to be controlled, and electrical fire. So it's more of an electrical fire. But the reason why people have called the Kundalini fire, or what do they call it? The reason why people call it the Kundalini fire is because inside of the physical body, it feels like a tremendous heat. It feels like a tremendous fire, but there is a reason for that, and I hope to explain that later on. But essentially, the Kundalini is the fundamental life force of the body. It's what keeps the body alive, and at its most fundamental level, it's actually a kind of electricity. So it's not the kind of fire, once again, that's chemical. It's an electrical fire, and it's this electrical fire which sort of churns slowly and delicately at the base of the spine, like a coiled serpent. They call it a coiled serpent because it's as though the electricity has not yet found, necessarily anyway, its what would you call it? It's a positive cathode. I think are the cathodes that the positive the positive portion of a electrolysis setup. I've forgotten, but essentially the Kundalini is like an electric circuit, and the reason why it's coiled is because if the Kundalini in your body is the negative pole, yeah, that's another word, then the what the Kundalini is trying to connect to when it uncoils, when it unwinds, is the positive pole or the positive charge. And that positive charge is what we're going to essentially expand on today, which is we call it the overself. The overself is the positive charge. It's what the Kundalini reaches up to, creating the experience of enlightenment itself. But the Kundalini does not necessarily have to be directly connected to the overself, because there's always a very tiny current of electricity, of that Kundalini fire, as it's sometimes termed. There's always a tiny little current of Kundalini or electricity going from the base of your spine to the overself. So you could say it in a way that everyone already has an active Kundalini. There's always electricity going up and down your spine in a physical way, and there's always electricity going up and down your spine in a metaphysical way, because there's always communication between the overself, which some people know as the higher self, and the lower self, or our souls. So there's always communication happening between the soul and the higher self, or the overself, and that is mediated by Kundalini, and that Kundalini current is usually extremely small. So, for lack of a better term, we might say you do not have an active Kundalini. Interesting, right? Which is contradictory, because it's not that you don't. You actually do have a Kundalini fire. It's just that the fire of the Kundalini is minimal, such that people would describe it as being inactive or coiled. There are various stages to the Kundalini uncoiling, and I'm a young man, so I like to watch my cartoons, and I don't know if anyone's ever seen Naruto, but if you have seen Naruto, basically, simply put, Naruto has this energy in him, right, which is a fox. So let's just replace the fox with a serpent for symbolic reasons. Now, this energy inside of Naruto, which takes the shape of a fox, is like his Kundalini, basically. And in order for Naruto to unlock his Kundalini, he basically grabs his chest and he twists the seal, right, which slowly releases the Kundalini from its barriers, its limitations. But each release of the Kundalini brings more energy into Naruto's body. And once again, Naruto is the character in reference here. This is very, very similar to how Kundalini works, you see, because Kundalini is it's kind of like a pressure gauge in the sense that you can release more and more current from the base of your spine, depending on how spiritually evolved you are. You are able to control how much electricity courses through your body, how much of the serpent is uncoiled, which is very, very important to learn. Which is once again why, and I reiterate, everybody's Kundalini is active to different levels. And it's actually, if you are able to be clairvoyant, if let's say you can see auras, you will be able to see that people who have more current or more Kundalini released, going betwixt the lower self, me, you, and the higher self or the over self, people who have more current, their auras are actually brighter because there's more electricity going up and down the body. So yeah, that's an analogy from sort of Naruto to the idea that the Kundalini is actually released at different stages. And once again, this Kundalini is the electricity of the body. It's the life force of the body. It's what powers the body. It's what keeps the body alive. If you didn't have this electricity, there would be no life force. And of course, a scientist and a biologist would disagree and say, no, we derive our life force from the protein we consume, and we derive our life force from the starch and the fats within that protein. But I would disagree, and I would say that chemical energy in the form of protein and in the form of glucose and lipids, lipids are fats, sorry. Chemical energy in the form of these things, without electricity, whether it's of a metaphysical kind or a physical kind, because the electricity you see is always hithering and thithering between physical and non-physical, i.e. wave and particle. It's always going between those two things. If chemical energy does not have electricity to manipulate it and make it do work, it will do no work, especially inside of a physical body. Most of all, inside of a physical body. In other things, it's different, you know. In other things, it's definitely different. But in terms of your biology, it's believed that electricity is what makes chemical energy in the form of lipids, in the form of glucose, and in the form of proteins do the work that they do. Which is once again why, if this Kundalini is not active, nothing is going to invigorate the chemicals into producing molecular energy to power the body in a more chemical way, which is what our biology studies the most. So yes, that is what Kundalini is. I'm just going to open up a document. So how is... so another thing as well is, I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but there's something called the Silver Chord. Okay, and the Silver Chord it's very, very, very important, because when your Kundalini fully activates, or even partially activates, or activates in any way, shape, or form, it travels along the Silver Chord. The Silver Chord actually is an extension of the Kundalini, if anyone knows about it, that is. And I will do a separate video on the Silver Chord. But the Silver Chord is a very, very important thing. And basically, the Kundalini filters and runs through the Silver Chord up to the higher self. So think of the Silver Chord like a copper wire, and think of the Kundalini as the electrons. Right? That it kind of works like that. So we will definitely learn more about the Silver Chord. A very important thing. And finally, one thing I wanted to talk about was the difference between Kundalini and Chi. So Chi is defined as a universal life force. Jay, in particular, believe that Chi has multiple forms. There's the Chi that we know, which is more of the physical version of Chi. It's like, if Chi could be matter, it would be known as like electrons, or quantum fields, or plasma, for instance. So that's a lower Chi, and Jay calls that Chi mental Chi, Jay calls that kind of Chi lower mental energy, right? Or mental energy for sure. In the raw material, they call it the yellow ray, or the yellow body. There's a higher Chi, a higher universal energy, which is known as prana. This is Jay calls that higher mental energy. It's more refined Chi, and it's much less physical. And there definitely is a difference between Kundalini and Chi. And we're just going to focus on generalizing Chi today. We'll just generalize Chi as universal energy. So there's a difference between Kundalini and universal energy, but they're also very much the same. Kundalini has a specific function. Think of Kundalini like an organ, like your heart. You know, your heart has a specific function. Your heart is made of energy, or universal energy if you prefer, but it has a very specific function as universal energy to do a very specific job. Kundalini is very much the same. Whilst it may be made of universal energy, like an organ, it has very specific functions that it looks to do or looks to execute in the physical body. So there is a difference between Kundalini and universal energy, which is that universal energy is actually more fundamental than Kundalini. And Kundalini is what happens when the universal energy basically, quotation marks, separates itself between two poles or 2 points, like a battery having a positive node and a negative node. So, but yeah, that's what Kundalini is, based off what I've understood from Jay, source readings, and other material. And always remember, you do have Kundalini coursing up and down your spine, even if you don't know it. It courses all through your body, and I'm going to definitely expand on Kundalini, because we do associate Kundalini with the spine because it has a deep relationship with the spine. But it also has a relationship with every single cell in your body. Every single cell in your body is related to Kundalini. So, and what that means is every single cell is processing Chi or universal energy, and that Chi or universal energy, it receives that from the Kundalini. So just to give you an idea, once again, the body truly is powered by the Kundalini, and the Kundalini energy permeates the entire body. So it's a very universal energy. It just happens to be that there's not usually a lot of current. The current of Kundalini is usually very low in most people, because we don't, most of us don't do spiritual exercises or anything like that, so we don't know how to activate it, or we don't know how to manipulate or use it. So mainly because of that, there's usually a very low current. So these are just some extras now, some little points of interest that may be entertaining to listen to. You don't have to listen to it if you don't want to. But let's talk about, okay, in the hypothetical situation where an individual releases the Kundalini, releases every faucet of it, what happens? Well, many things can happen. But the main thing you should learn is about this particular thing is that if an individual at any moment could fully release the Kundalini, they would never have to eat ever again. They probably wouldn't even have to drink water ever again. They would be a true avatar, because the entire body would become full, absolutely fundamentally full of electricity, and that excessive amount of electricity would be able to substitute for food, for water, and for basically anything. Anything. In fact, with all that electricity, you'd be able to do some very marvelous things, like walking on water and manifesting objects out of the air. You'd be able to do serious harm to people, and you'd be able to do some serious good to people. You would be your own, those things that people use to bring people back to life, and they go clear, like that. You'd be your own one of those with these two little hands of yours. You would be able to generate enough energy to literally bring someone back to life, if their soul is still lingering on, not willing to go yet to the other side. The healing powers you would have would rival that of doctors easily, and would rival doctors' equipment easily. And to be honest with you, if someone were to sit next to you, they would feel as though they were alive, as though some force was feeding them a tremendous amount of energy. And if you somehow learned how to spread that energy, people would be able to feel a field around you. It's as though your aura has some level of physicality to it, which it would if you had a fully active Kundalini. And all of that energy, would you believe it? Would you believe it? All of that energy is literally coiled at the base of your spine. Would you believe that you have that much potential energy? And that's exactly what it is. It's potential energy, because it is literally like a battery. So it's waiting to meet its positive pole, and only a small slither amount of it is ever coursing up and down the spine. There are some people, maybe you as well, who have the unfortunate experience of having the Kundalini spontaneously activate, causing a small release of current, not very large, but a small release of current, except it's enough current to cause great discomfort through the nervous system, through the body. Yeah? To the people out there who have this experience, you have my sympathy. And what we have to be aware of is how to basically make it so that you have control over the Kundalini fire. Because when we mess around with the Kundalini forces, it can actually cause great damage to the nervous system of the body if you don't manage it correctly. So eating junk food is a no-go. If you like junk food and your Kundalini serpent is in any way active that it can accidentally just release a little bit of current, you got to be careful with junk food. Don't eat that stuff, because that stuff is really going to agitate that serpent, and you're going to experience, when the Kundalini does activate, a lot of pain. So avoid junk food, avoid sodas and those kinds of things. Yeah, avoid basically anything unhealthy. Easier said than done, right? But yeah, avoid anything unhealthy. Also avoid certain kinds of pranayama. Pranayama is breath work. Yeah, we're using breathing to generate chi, or prana if you prefer. I'm just going to use the word chi. We're using breathing to generate universal energy, and we're directing that universal energy. We're using breathing to generate universal energy, and we're directing that universal energy to various portions of the body. If you do breathing exercises and your Kundalini is active enough to release its first seal, basically, to release its first seal, when that might cause you a lot of pain. Okay, so you should be very careful with pranayama, with breathing exercises, because they can spontaneously activate the chi, and that can be very painful. And you have to learn how to practice certain breathing methods, because breathing is very dangerous for people who have a more active chi, a more active Kundalini. Okay, so you've got to be very careful with that. Anything else? We will talk about all of these things in much more vivid detail, so that people can get more understanding of these things. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you want to be able to experience Kundalini, to experience what it feels like. And I'm not going to leave you guys out. I'm definitely going to help you all with moving toward those kinds of experiences. So consider this YouTube channel to basically be a beginning to many, many good things, and also giving just clarifications, hopefully, to the things that Jay say. And I just want to make a basic course of spirituality, something really simplistic, something really straightforward, just to iron out the basics, because I feel like in this world we've made spirituality more complicated than it is. It's all about, fundamentally, electricity, balancing electricity through the idea of this idea that we'll talk about in more detail, called coherence. So balancing energy through making the electricity itself more coherent. And it's these two main principles, electricity and coherence. They work together to allow you to experience great harmony in life. And it's the reason why practices like meditation exist, and all of those things. So if you're wondering where they come from, they all come from the balance of learning how to work with electricity and learning how to make it work for you, which is coherence, basically. So yeah, that's it. I have nothing else to say. Hopefully this was somewhat enjoyable. I know it's very just much a information splurge, and hopefully it was coherently, as such, pardon the pun, said or given. And yeah, I hope you have a wonderful day. more videos to come. Yeah. Peace and love. Peace and love.